Good afternoon. I am the expert layman. As someone who recently crossed the threshold and can consistently kill a basilisk, I feel like I'm in a unique position because most of the people who crossed that threshold did it a long time ago, and kind of hard to explain, but a lot of times you want to model yourself off the best person. Oh my god, I did not kill the volume on that. Oh god, kill my voice, kill my voice. Okay, I'll just kill it. Sorry about that. Well, at least I know my audio is good. You typically want to find the absolute pinnacle of what someone's capable of and then try to model after them. And a lot of times, for inspiration anyway, that's a good way to go. But I've noticed that the best players, the people who can, do the most amazing solos of the Medusa and the Hydra, there's this thing. You can always have a Venn diagram with two circles. And in one circle it is those that are superb at doing the thing. And the other bubble is people who are good at explaining the thing. And there's almost no overlap between those bubbles. Typically, it's like science communicators. The best scientists are usually awful at explaining what they're doing to people outside their field. That's why people like Neil deGrasse Tyson and Sean Carroll and Brian Greene are rare, because they can actually put it in terms that people who aren't already deep in it can understand. So that, I feel that since I recently crossed the threshold, I did it with the meta chieftain build, and there is a lot to keep track of with the chieftain. I'm going to be also talking about the zone of proximal improvement and cognitive load. Because the zone of proximal improvement means to improve at a thing, you need the right amount of difficulty. If it's too easy, you don't improve. But if it's too difficult and you're overwhelmed, you also don't improve. You need just the right amount of difficulty to improve your skills. And the best ship for elite pilots is not necessarily the best ship for people trying to learn how. And there's essentially by practicing, by training, you move things out of your working memory into procedural memory. In other words, things become unconscious. You don't have to think about them, or at least think about them as much to do the things. And a lot of the people who are the best at this, they've moved almost everything over into the procedural memory area. But a new person has to think about all of these things. So, first thing, if you want to get past, it's not that hard to get past the Cyclops. You can pretty much just go toe-to-toe with them and for the most part take them out without a whole lot of training. But so this is really, if you're worried about, if it seems like it's too hard and it's too much, this will show you the easy way to take out a Cyclops. But if you're clapping the Cyclops and you tried the Basilisk and you just keep getting your ass handed to you, this is also for that. First things first, as you'll see, Astrope, however you want to pronounce it, there are a few places that are really, really good for training, and this is one of them. It is a tiny little system. It doesn't take like more than 30 seconds to get to any of the signal sources near the primary star. And the starport here, the Copernicus Observatory, is like right there. And there are dozens of signal sources. Usually when I'm maybe the full spectrum system scanner or whatever that is good also, but it's so simple to just go and scan the navigation beacon, and then when you get back into Super Cruise, all the unidentified signal sources are identified. And if you are looking for a Cyclops, that is a threat 5. If you're looking for a Basilisk, that is threat 6. You are not guaranteed to get one of those. In fact, you'll often go on strings. There is, I don't know, one in 4, it's hard to calculate, a chance that you will just get a bunch of scouts, which is really annoying, because they'll tick a little bit off your hull before you can get out of there, or it might be empty. But that is what you're looking for. And I guess do this. But this is a great system for doing that. I will not be playing as I'm doing the stream, as the cognitive load would just be too much, and I would perform very poorly, and that would not be good for anybody. This is just, you leave the station, and I'm just jumping in 5-second increments here. Just go scan, go to the nav beacon. Now, I would also say, and I suppose some purists might say, you're abusing Super Cruise Assist, but, and I don't have, you know, my time is valuable. And if you're just going to be, a lot of times you'll just go to signal after signal, and all you're getting is scouts. So this is just me dropping by the nav beacon, give it a scan so it'll reveal all the signal sources. And I will use the Super Cruise Assist so that, like, I've never overshot anything in this system. No matter how fast I'm going, it still drops me out. And something about low mass system or small or whatever, you can drop at like almost 10 kilometers or 10,000 kilometers or 1,000 kilometers, whatever it is. You can drop at almost 10 times the distance you normally can, and which it saves you a lot of time. As you can see, all these different signal sources. And right now, this is one I did recently. It's actually a perfect run. I took no damage except a bug where you'll be like 5 kilometers away from the interceptor, and when a swarm spawns, a couple of them will spawn on you and run into you, and then they teleport back to their ship. So it's just a bug. So I took a 1% from that, but that doesn't count. But I just wanted to, the way to reduce the cognitive load and help people stay in the zone of proximal improvement. Now that was a psychological term. I'll see. And it eventually kind of, as it moved out of the clinical into the, I guess you'd say colloquial, it turned into you're in the zone, which sort of means more that you're in a flow state, or you're in a state of heightened concentration and focus. But for like clinical psychological term, it just means that you are at the right level of difficulty to improve your skills. Now, this is pretty sweet. I can do this like 1 in 4, 1 in 5 times. Oh wait, is this not that one? Oh. I thought I'd loaded the video where I got the one shot on the swarm. Must have been a different time, but... So, you need a whole suite of skills if you're going to take out a basilisk. And you need to develop them. This is not the right video. Give me just a second here. Oh, I labeled it. I must have mislabeled it. Oh, I know what it is. It was the second fight. Let's try this again. Okay, this will make more sense. I forgot I had recorded 2 fights. You need a whole suite of skills if you're going to be taking out the Basilisk, and the Cyclops is your training partner. I had so much trouble with the Basilisk that I decided I am not moving on from the Cyclops till I can get 100% kills in the Cyclops. Which I did, and then I moved on to the Basilisk, but literally hundreds. Like, I'm not a person of natural talent when it comes to gaming. Yeah, I think this is the one where I get the swarm with 1 shot right off the bat. Yeah. Because I did maybe 1 in 5 times. Only did it once on the Basilisk, though. So the suite of skills, one of them is you gotta get good with your flak launcher. I know a lot of people want to skip the flak. Hey, I saw a guy do it without. Yeah, that guy that did it without, he did it a whole bunch with. And if you put in the time using the flak launcher, you also learn about how the swarm behaves. And when you understand the behavior of the swarm better, you can go flakless, but skipping understanding how the swarm works is not good. And pretty much the way to reduce neurological load and keep you in the zone of proximal improvement is, with this build, you do not have to roll. You do not have to use lateral thrust. You really don't have to manage your heat. And you don't have to time out a Gauss cannon. Now, the enhanced AX multi-cannons are no good past the Basilisk. You're just not doing enough damage. In fact, on the Basilisk, I also have the Javelin ship-launched fighter that does pretty good exertion damage, and it kind of helps get those hearts exposed. But the suite of skills would be flying without flight assist, and I know there are people who do things with flight assist on, and I would be willing to wager that most of them also know flight assist off, and they're doing it with flight assist just to see if they can. And there's a lot of people who just like to find challenges, or it could be somebody who just hated flight assist off so much that he invested the time into figuring out how to do things with flight assist on. But the idea that you see, until like a few months ago, I was a super casual player. I was just not interested in the high-end stuff that this game offered. I like coming in, I like mining, I like, going into hazardous resource sites. I got my Corvette, and then eventually I'm like, okay, I want to, I did the engineering because I didn't want to do planetary landings, and I only really wanted to mine asteroids. But then, essentially, when I left World of Warcraft Classic, because it was not challenging, and there's just so many toxic people in there, I needed a new challenge. And you'll notice the gamepad input indicator in the upper left-hand corner of your screen. I've worked, production manufacturing jobs, and my body's been kind of beat up, and my wrists are not in great shape, especially my right wrist. And I thought I was going to have to leave World of Warcraft Classic because I just couldn't spend that much time holding the mouse. And I'm like, if I don't figure out how to play this on a gamepad. So yeah, you just as they're approaching, you can just basically thrust down and keep them in your sights. For the Cyclops, it's a little bit more complicated with the Basilisk, but we'll get to that later in the video. But while Elite Dangerous has a robust set of options for graphics and so much, they've done a really good job. It is still kind of weak for the gamepad, so I'm essentially, for the most part, using keyboard inputs. But I'm using it through a piece of software called Anti-Micro, and that's the thing you're seeing up in the upper left, where I can, like with the mouse control, I can adjust the acceleration. So like for the first, quarter second, it only moves at like 1/4 speed. But after 1/4 second, it moves at half speed. And if I'm still moving it after half a second, it goes to full speed. It's not quite that, but it's something like that. What it does is it lets you make really fine adjustments with your gamepad that would be very difficult. I also have a contactless gamepad. It uses the Hall effect. Rather than the stick making physical contact with a sensor, as in pretty much all gamepads, those wear out, and you end up with a dead zone. These cannot generate a dead zone because there's no physical contact. There's a small magnet on the other end of the stick, and they have a sensor that a magnetic sensor that tells where the position of the stick is, so it doesn't make any contact. The enhanced Xeno scanner, right at the beginning, you saw that. And with the Cyclops, you're just pushing down, keeping them in your sights. As soon as the heart's exerted, have a button mapped to cycle sub-targets, and you can just cycle through it. You can also go into your left side menu and go into target and select it. A little trick with the Cyclops. If you stay within about 5,000 kilometers the swarm will always spawn between you and the interceptor, so you don't have to go around it. Cute little trick. But once it's spawned, you can turn around. I'm just burning off some ammo, so I have a full clips when I turn around. Oh, the other thing, boosting and turning around. If when you boost, you get pulled forward and then it kind of rocks back into place. If you start if you're on flight assist off and you start pitching as it's rolling back, you won't change your trajectory, but you will pitch faster. Something I didn't happen to do there, but I really didn't need to. So yeah, I would say if you're still having a little trouble with the flak, I would just say this is what I did. Is I just took the crate, and it doesn't have to be that, but it creates a nice, I think, training ship. And I just put 5 flak cannons on it, and I would just go into an instance and take out swarms until I didn't have any ammo left, and I would just have each of them in their own weapon group, stay out at distance, and do well, anything but Basilisk, because they're just so fast it doesn't work so well. But you're not trying to kill them, you're just going in and taking out the swarm, and after a few minutes they will enrage, and every time you destroy a swarm, they'll put a new swarm out. So it actually makes for really, really good practice. So that is a really good way to train with the flak cannon, or remote release flak launcher. The other nice thing about this particular build, and you can do it in a bunch of different ways, it doesn't have to be the crate, but I've got the 3 enhanced AX multi-cannons, and then I've got a beam laser, and then I've got the flak launcher. Now, most people will not use the turreted version of the beam laser because you get a little bit more, well, not a little bit, but like 30-40% more heat transfer with the gimbaled. And there's almost no point in using the fixed because there's little difference in heat transfer between them. But again, this comes back to cognitive load. I don't have to worry about aiming the turreted one, and it does plenty good for removing my heat. In fact, since the multi-cannons generate so little heat, I don't really have to heat sink. At least not really on the Cyclops. On the Basilisk, if you're just constantly firing and you're boosting regularly, you will go over your 20%. But this again comes back to the cognitive load thing. I don't have to aim my beam laser. I don't really have to worry about heat management. I don't have to worry about rolling. I don't have to worry about lateral movement. I don't have to worry about having really precise aim with my weapons. And I think even though I did it with the Gauss cannons on the meta build of the Chieftain, was my first Basilisk kill, I could not consistently repeat it because I had to be in such a focused state. Now, if I do this for a while, Basilisk anyway, and I'm getting more used to the way they move. Because it was taking everything I got just to try to get through the fight that I really didn't feel like I was learning. I was, out of the zone of proximal learning. But that is a Cyclops. I also have... Oops. I think we can skip. Okay. And this is the Basilisk. This one has the 5 hearts, and it has a maximum speed much higher than the Cyclops. It also takes a great deal more damage to exert the heart, and it takes more damage to destroy a heart. And it hits much, much harder. If you've been having trouble with the Basilisk, I would recommend, like I did, is to just go train on the Cyclops until you can just own the fight. So you're just so comfortable with it. This will also teach you all the secondary skills. It's almost like a talent tree, like in World of Warcraft or other games, to where the good stuff down near the bottom of the tree, you don't get access to that till you filled in enough of the tree above it. And things in that tree would be like, you know, flak launcher. It would be like flight assist, flying with flight assist off. It would be, you know, most of the time it would be lateral and roll and learning how to. There's like 3 levels to cold orbiting. There is just moving in such a way that you aren't getting hit. A second level could be you're mostly not getting hit, and you can, for the most part, hit your target. But there's this third level, and it's what you see in like the amazing videos you can see on YouTube of people soloing stuff. Is they have this third level where not only can they completely avoid getting hit, but they can get into this Goldilocks zone to where they can just hit their target over and over again. And they keep its speed up to the point where it's not really moving around, and they can just hit the heart over and over and over again. They're also really good at, you know, aiming, but as you can see, the the Basilisk is a little bit trickier, and it takes a lot more. I'm using, you can see the chip launch fighter. It actually does some decent exertion damage. But my fundamental point is there are people with natural talent, you know, in games, but you're still not going to get around. You got to put in the time. The natural talent will reduce the amount of time it takes a person to acquire all these skills, but you still have to acquire all the skills. This isn't like a game where it's pretty much like a bunch of other games, and then all you got to do is learn the choreography for a particular thing, and then it's done. You have to acquire like a whole skill set. And I'm still working on it. But as someone who recently crossed the threshold, I think people who crossed it a long time ago don't remember what it was like not to know. It is a little bit like I used to do commercial and newspaper printing, and that is a very complicated thing. The smallest press, and these are offset web presses, so it's a giant roll of paper, miles long, you know, like 3 feet wide, 3 feet tall, and it runs all the way through the entire machine and gets folded at the end. And sorry, I'm watching the fight. When I first started doing that, there's basically 3 levels. You have the head pressman, and basically the guy in charge. You have the second man, or assistant to the head pressman, who can do most of the things the head pressman can do, but he generally has less experience and less understanding. Because you're not just pushing buttons. You're doing most of your own repairs. You're doing your own maintenance. You're doing your own troubleshooting. That kind of thing. And then the third person is the roll tender, who fundamentally their job is to load the rolls of paper, but also they do some of the same stuff the second man does. And at the bottom, you're a stacker. You're a person who stacks the product. One thing I learned, and I trained a lot of stackers, and it sounds like it's simple, but there's actually kind of some complexity to it. The thing I learned is that people learn differently. There are people who, you could say there are concept people and recipe people. And the concept people, they will gain an unconscious understanding. They'll be building a model in their mind of the thing that they're working on, and then they will be able to do the thing. Pretty much everybody will eventually build a model and be working from that, but they're more attuned to that, and they tend to be more mechanically inclined. And then there are also recipe people, and there's no good or wrong. You know, recipe people are better in social systems than the concept people. And the recipe people, they just, okay, give me a series of steps. They typically don't understand why they're doing the things that they're doing. This is just the thing that you do. And for a lot of games, once you have the recipe, and then can act out the recipe, you will succeed at whatever it is you're trying to do. But you have to build a whole model in Elite Dangerous, many of them. Like understanding your velocity, your vector, your orientation, you know, relative to theirs, and keep track of multiple things like your heat, you know, how long before the enrage, you know, understand the kind of chaotic movement of the swarm and of the Thargoid, and from very subtle cues be able to tell what it is they're likely to do next based on what they're doing right now. There's a lot to acquire. And as a head pressman, I eventually rose all the way up. But when I was just jogging or even roll tending, I would listen to two head pressmen from, like, you know, different shifts talk. And it's like there was this shorthand. It's like they were speaking in a different language. Like they clearly understood each other and were making use of the information they're sharing, but like it was like a foreign language to everybody else. And that's kind of how I feel. Oh, with the ship launch fighter can be a real pain in the ass if you're trying to use it, because it makes the swarm kind of behave. It's hard to take out a swarm if it's chasing your fighter around. But the fighter is great for exerting the heart, so as soon as the swarm spawns, you just have it hold position and it gets killed right away, and then it's not really much of an issue. You're going to have to shoot past, kind of like I did with silent running, if the interceptor's between you and the swarm, you have to, you know, switch their position by going around them. But as I was saying, I feel like the elite pilots in Elite Dangerous right now are like the head pressmen. They're speaking in this language that makes sense to them and to the people at their similar level, but it's not all of them. I'm just saying it's just a trend that they are working from models and assumptions that are not shared by novice pilots. And it's like the cold orbiting thing. Most of the videos are almost completely useless because there's like assumptions and techniques and understandings that have to be employed to make that work that a novice player won't have. There was one guy who made a couple of videos on it who clearly understood that, you know, hey, you should probably just start off with the down thrust orbit, get that pretty much figured out, then, you know, mix in the lateral or use some boost. And it's like, you know, he understood, you know, basically the idea of the zone of proximal improvement. Telling someone that they got to manage their lateral, forward, reverse thrust, their roll, you know, and all of that, like, right from the get-go. There is the kind of detachment that they don't understand what it's like, but there's also another element, which I also saw in press rooms, to where there were some people that would... there were people who were very happy to show you and teach you. They enjoyed it. You know, it was fulfilling for them, you know. And then there were people who didn't want to share anything. They didn't want... because it kind of threatened their status if other people knew what they knew. And they wouldn't, like, teach anybody or show anybody anything. There were even people who would deliberately undermine people by telling them things they knew weren't accurate, just to throw them off. I have seen both of these things on the Anti-Xeno Initiative Discord. I think I'm going to do this in another video, because it's more... I do videos on psychology and philosophy, you know, meaning of life stuff and human nature stuff, and that's probably more appropriate in that video. This I guess I'm just going to keep harping on it. You got to put in the time. You got to... And you have to get out of the AX combat zones. You pick up some very bad habits. Now, it's a good place to start, so you can just kind of dip your toe in and kind of see some of the mechanics and, you know, get into some fights with, you know, interceptors, and mostly Cyclops, to where you can just kind of dip your toe in and see what it's like. But you actually have to get out of there, because you will acquire a ton of bad habits. You need to get to Astrop, or one place like this, to where you can just be you and the interceptor and just spend a lot of time there. Now, I'm not saying this is what you have to do. Some people, like, I was like that for a long time. I just want to come in, maybe do some mining, maybe, kill some pirates. At some point, I wanted to do more. And if you're a person who wants to do more, and you are stuck on either the Cyclops or the Basilisk, I wouldn't actually recommend the Chieftain. Although I did a build with the Chieftain, but since you can only get 2 large multi-cannons on it, it's not really viable for the Basilisk. Although you could do it with the, Cyclops. Cyclops is, Cyclops, I'm sorry, is just really weak. I didn't used to think this, but the Basilisk is like 100 times harder than the Cyclops. Like, it's kind of nuts. And you just get punished so hard for every mistake. And it was worth going out and unlocking the Javelin, because the Javelin, the Guardian fighter, its shard cannon does considerable exertion damage. Now, I'm going to say, with this strategy, you don't need engineered. If you can afford to go get a crate, you can at least get like A slot stuff where it counts, and lightweight wherever you can. Like, you don't need like a full. You can put a 6A power plant in it, but since you're not running a shield, you can totally get away with a 5A. You can put a 7A distributor, but you can get away with a 6A. So, you can take out a Cyclops with just AX weapons and non-engineered. If you're just want to dip your toe in without having to get a bunch of engineering and unlock a bunch of Guardian weapons. And there are ship launch fighters that you don't have to unlock that can do damage to Thargoids. It'll be a little bit rougher, but like I said, the Cyclops is pretty easy. I am having a lot of fun with this. I like a challenge. I like figuring out how to do difficult things. If you are new to the game, or you are a casual player like me and you're trying to get into it, yeah, just go get yourself a crate. Throw some multi-cannons on it. Now, the thermal vent beam is important, and if the engineer for that isn't hard to unlock, and he's in the bubble, it's not hard. And you can get the flak launcher and the multi-cannons, and lots of different places. If you do transport missions, like from basically running people out of systems that are under attack to a rescue ship, you can get a lot of manufactured engineering materials, but also where you're taking the people will have all the vendor AX items that you need. Well, I think that's everything that I wanted to get through. Loving the game. It's going to be a while before I take out a Medusa. Like same thing I did with the Cyclops. I'm not moving on until I hit 100%. And I'm trying to hit the 100% on the Basilisk. And I've gotten to the 3rd heart, taking no damage. So, it seems totally doable. I always seem to do something stupid and screw it up. But eventually I'm going to move on and use Gauss cannons. But getting the familiarity with how the Basilisk moves is what I'm really gaining right now. And just getting used to the timing so you don't hit the enrage timer, and predicting how he's going to move, and then how to avoid him when I don't have the cognitive load of trying to, hit a heart with a Gauss cannon. That's a big neurological load. But as I move the other skills I need into procedural memory, I will have more working memory for aiming my Gauss cannon. But in the meantime, gonna keep killing Cyclops with this build. Or, I mean, Basilisk with this build. What am I doing right here? Oh, for some reason the swarm isn't killed. Oh, that's what it is. Yeah, another thing with the fighter that's nice is if there's only a couple left in the swarm, you just go ahead and put your fighter out. They'll always go right for your fighter, and they can't. If there's only a couple of them, their attacks aren't going to be enough to kill it. But eventually they will go suicide, and they'll either kill them or they won't, but they will be gone. And if they kill them, you just put another one out. But yeah, not a whole lot to keep track of here. And if you're trying to do the Basilisk, or just hit me on Discord if you want to see the build, or maybe I'll put it in the description or something. Well, happy hunting, Commanders. You all have a great day.